I know we have a lot of competition with the weather, so I appreciate people spending some of their evening with us. And we've got a great program. We will get started shortly. I'm just going to give a few more moments for people to funnel in, but we've put the agenda up. We'll be going over traffic enforcement. I know that's something our office gets a lot of outreach concerning. We've had a real increase in accidents and more fatal accidents. So it's a real issue that we've got to do better to address in the city. We also have a lot of hit and runs. I've seen several just along Monument Avenue and throughout the second district. And this is something that's not unique to the second, unfortunately. It's throughout the city and it's throughout the country. So we will be talking about that with Lieutenant from RPD. We're hoping to have Mariah White on. She, like all of our public servants, is juggling multiple roles, and we're hopeful that she will be able to join us tonight. Then we will have presentations from the Director of Parks and Rec and from our Acting Director of Planning and Development Review, Kevin Bonk, to discuss the updated Pulse Corridor rezoning plan, the Richmond 300 amendments, and then proposed parking changes, which we have gotten a lot of emails about recently today, because there was an article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch and some other news outlets. So we will be going over all of those items. And then we will have greetings from candidates that are running for Commonwealth Attorney and Sheriff. We just wanted to give them a platform to say hello, share their contact information, any events they have coming up, so you can get more information on those two things that will be on your ballot this June in the Democratic primary. And then we'll wrap up and do some Q&A from Sven and myself. We can talk about the ARP funds that will be coming down, the recovery funds. We can talk about the legislative work that we are doing in our office, and anything else people are interested in. So we'll give it 2 more minutes. Jerome, great seeing you. It's always fun to see who has logged in while I've been talking. Got some great people in here. So thank you for spending some of your beautiful Wednesday evening with us. But let's see, we'll give it 1 more minute and then we'll get started. It's excited to see some people from Jackson Ward. Jackson Ward Historic Neighborhood Association had their meeting last night, and one of the big topics was traffic safety. So I encouraged everyone to attend the meeting tonight, since that was going to be on our agenda. And just to give a heads up for the next meeting, we're hoping to have the Director of Public Works with us, as well as some other special guests. So there's always so much that we can put on the agenda. Let's go ahead and get started, Sven. And I think we've got a good crew here tonight. So welcome everybody. Great to see you. Just some quick updates from us, and then we'll go into our presentations. We don't want to keep our city staff later than they've already been working. For anyone who's wondering about the casino process, that usually is something I get a lot of outreach about. And I do believe the selection committee will be making a decision imminently. I think, it could be coming this week. There is a full city council meeting on Monday. So I know, they have narrowed their negotiations with the 2 remaining finalists, the Cordish Company at Bowtie in our district, and then Urban One down in the 8th district. So again, they are finalizing those 2 term sheets. They're comparing them and weighing all the community input and the relative factors to then take a project to the mayor for the mayor's blessing. And then after that, it will go to city council for review. Then it will go onto the ballot in November, where everyone can vote yes or no. And I know this process has been frustrating for everybody, myself included, especially since it's in our district, and I really felt like I've been kept at arm's length and not able to engage as fully as I would like. So appreciate everyone who's reached out to us about the casino. Again, for those who are logging on, we expect probably a decision this week. I have continued to tell them the strong opposition that I have and that I'm hearing, which, while absolutely there are some folks who support the Cordish proposal, overwhelmingly that is not the sentiment of Second District. So that's probably enough on the casino. Feel free to reach out to our office about that offline. I would like to go ahead and turn over the presentation to the Richmond Police Department to talk about traffic safety. And Lieutenant Capriglione is going to share some, he's got a slide that he's going to pull up here.
Sure.
I know this is a big issue for everyone. We talked about it a little bit as people were coming into the meeting, but it's not just in the Second District, it's all over the city, it's all over the nation. People are speeding, they're more distracted. We also have more people out on the street as pedestrians and cyclists because that really increased during COVID, and people are speeding, there are more people out there. It's a really dangerous mix. And we've got to look at not just law enforcement, but also, physical interventions with our traffic engineering. So part one of the conversation is what is RPD doing? What are they seeing and how can we support them? Thank you.
Lieutenant, you should be able to share your screen now.
Can everyone see that?
Yes, sir.
You can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, this is a traffic analysis we put together to help explain maybe a little bit about how we enforce traffic speed in the city and just a little bit about what the numbers kind of tell us. So, okay. All these red lines here are what's called a high injury network, okay? And there are streets throughout the city that we try to enforce speed on as much as we possibly can. And if you look at it, it's about 7% of the roadway surface in the city, which doesn't seem like a lot, but those roadways comprise 62% of the fatality and serious injury accidents that we have in the city, okay? So those are streets like we've got Hull Street, Broad Rock Boulevard, Midlothian Turnpike, Forest Hill, you got the Chamberlain Avenue corridor, and then you've got Main Street, Carey Street, and the streets on north of the river. So as you can see, we've been enforcing speed quite a bit, 37,000 tickets over the past, well, since January 2018. But that's where we try to spend the primary part of our speed enforcement time. Traffic summonses to date. So you can see in 2018, a little over 11,000, almost 12, big jump in 2019. And that had to do with how we decided to enforce speed across the city. We had the Special Operations Division where I work, which is primarily traffic officers over here. We stayed on the high injury network as much as we possibly could. And we had a lot of other officers throughout each precinct trained in speed enforcement. And they did high injury network in their precincts, but they also handled the secondary roadways off the high injury network. And you can see with that kind of strategy in place, we wrote, over 4,000 more tickets in 2019. And then you can see how it dipped in 2020. The pandemic, the civil unrest really took us off our ability to enforce speed. We had a little bit of a mention earlier of the traffic fatalities, and here they are since 2018. Little spike in 19. In 20, we had a little reduction, and we are sitting at 5 currently. In 2020, of those 21 fatalities, 8 were speed related and 8 were alcohol related. And then this year, of the 5 that we've had in 2021, 3 have been speed related and 1 has been alcohol related. So big factors in any of these serious crashes or fatalities usually involves speed or alcohol at some point. And there's, again, where we have our fatalities, you can see, pretty much right along those lines on the high injury network. Here we have Hull Street, we have quite a few. In South Side, here we have the Chamberlain Avenue corridor, right, running onto Richmond Highway. We've got West Broad Street where we've had a few as well. So the numbers kind of match a lot of times where the maps do. Here's our hotspot locations where we have a majority of our crashes. You can see over here in this box, Hull Street, Commerce Road, Chamberlain, Main Street, Arthur Ashe, Broad Street, Belvedere. And then these were our precincts are. That's what these notations are here. And then what takes us out of the ability to enforce speed, to echo the council person's comment about it is probably one of the most pressing concerns in most any neighborhood is speed enforcement and traffic in general. But what takes us away from our ability to do that is our main responsibility is obviously answering the 911 calls for service. And as you can see, that's a big responsibility from week to week, day to day. As of April 26th throughout the city, right, almost 240,000 calls already, generating over 8,000 reports. So that's a lot of time that the officers are doing, alarm calls, responding to assaults, mental parties, crashes, things like that. It just takes us away from our ability to be proactive with speed. And as we mentioned earlier, how we have our radar operators across the city spread out. There's 15 in first, there's 20 in second, and it goes on down. These were all everyone in all these numbers signify who in each precinct, how many officers are certified to run speed enforcement. And here at SOD, we have 20. So 123 total in the city. And I think this is the last slide. And this just talks about how many crashes that we've had. So 5,400 crashes in the city as of April 26th. And to the councilperson's comment about the hit and runs, 1,300, over 1,300 so far, hit and run crashes this year. We usually end up at the year around just under 4,000 hit and run crashes a year in the city. So I'll be more than willing to take any questions anybody has. If I can figure out how to.
Thank you so much. I'll kick it off with a question I have. When
Okay,
you
I'm trying to
listed the
get-
fatalities and the injuries, is that just folks within the vehicles, or does that account for people who are hit by cars that are pedestrians or cyclists?
It counts to everybody. Everybody
Okay.
is accounted for, and that's how we separate them out. I believe it's motorcycles, pedestrians, and vehicles.
Okay, so I feel
And
like on your
bicycles.
map, we did have a neighbor, who was hit and ultimately died, who had crossed Robinson, and she was in the crosswalk and
Mhm.
was hit by a car at night.
Yes. Yeah, I was out there for that particular crash on that night. I know she was in the hospital for quite a while, and then she passed recently. And there was an arrest made, I believe, that night, or after the investigation was done, there was an arrest made in that case. I don't think it's been through the court process just yet.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand and we can unmute you.
I see a question in the chat. Could you please speak to the problem of extreme noise from motorcycles and other illegally modified vehicles and what RPD is doing to address this problem?
Yeah, that's a problem. It's a nationwide problem if you follow the topic. And we have had some concerns about that over the past few years. And this year is one of those years where we're having the same kind of concerns with the dirt bikes and the ATVs. They primarily show up on the weekends. And that's tough for us to immediately intervene because it's a very dangerous situation if we try to get them to stop and then we have to maybe they don't want to stop. We don't want to get into pursuit and make a dangerous situation more dangerous. So we do have some investigative techniques that we have employed to try to identify some of these people. I don't want to get too much into the details of that. We have made some arrests on some of those people. We've seized some equipment from some of those people. So it is something that we are serious about. We meet regularly about, but it's a tough topic. And again, it's a nationwide problem. If anybody has any ideas on how, any suggestions for us, we'd be glad to look into that. One way I think the general public could help out is when they see those groups to please call 911 and make us aware of where they are and where you see them. If you're willing, take photos or videos of those and send them to us. We've had some people do that. And it helps us identify people who show up out there. If you are at a light and you see that group come up and you're able to take a picture of maybe a license plate or just anything really, because it helps us identify people later on. So those are ways that the general public can help us out while we, again, just try to address this situation. It's tough, but sometimes we can't intervene as much as we would like to immediately while it's happening. We try to make that situation as safe as possible and work identification and arrest on the back end, because if we just don't want to make a situation more dangerous than it already is, if that answers your question.
Thank you. And I see Jerome has his hand raised. And I will just note on this topic, I did bring it up in my monthly meeting with the mayor, and he has been talking to mayors in other cities, and he does have things he's working with counterparts at the state level to address this, but I don't want to tip his hand on what he's doing, but
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
everyone is frustrated about it, and it is a problem.
I agree.
Jerome, are you able to unmute yourself?
I think I did. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking my call. Officer, is it possible to drill down? If we give you boundaries, can you drill down the data and then send it to us? Because I know in Carver, what we would like to do is to get an ordinance passed to actually create some traffic calming measures that we are sure that if we can get those ordinances passed or those stop signs or speed bumps or whatever the case in place, then it would help to slow down some of the traffic in Carver, period.
Sure. We work hand in hand with DPW and we enforce speed. And then they are the experts in terms of street redesigns and things of what you're speaking about. And I'd be more than happy to work with you to get you in contact with the right people to, get those conversations going.
Oh, I have those folks. I just would like to get your data so that when we set up our request for ordinance, that
Okay.
they can't tell us once again to go to MUTA and tell us that these are the only things that we are eligible to receive, which is few and far, especially with the changes that's going on in the neighborhood as far as residents and density.
Sure. I mean, Jerome, if I could get your contact information, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you offline and get you exactly what you're looking for.
Great.
Awesome. I'll connect you guys.
Sure, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
cool.
Yes, sir.
So a follow-up to the motorcyclists, two folks have put in the chat, that pretty much every night at Belvedere and Monroe Park, we were seeing the motorcyclists. So is that what you referenced, where you're sort of watching from the sidelines and working on that? Is there anything more aggressive that can be done?
We're doing everything we can without making a bad situation worse. And I don't want to just I'm not putting you off or anything like that. And we know where these groups meet up, and we're trying to work as best we can to make some identification of some people and do an investigation where we can make a bigger impact, maybe in the long run. But it's difficult to intervene and do an immediate kind of intervention with these folks. Based on what we know that we've tried in the past and based on how other cities have tried to intervene and do some things, we think the best course of action at this point in time is to, the safest way to do it is kind of the way we're doing it now, is just try to identify people as best we can and, not get in a situation where we're chasing motorcycles and ATVs through the city. We think that would make a dangerous situation that is already unsafe much, much more dangerous.
Thank you. And to the question about data, that is certainly really helpful, as I try from our office to help the neighborhoods come up with some design solutions. And another area that I get a lot of comments about is Marshall and Adams in Jackson Ward. And I know there was a really dramatic accident, again, just yesterday. If you have any information on that intersection and for Jackson Ward, we would really appreciate it.
Sure. Not right off the top of my head. I know there was a bad crash there earlier this year. If that's the intersection I'm thinking of, where you come off the interstate there and then you had, I guess that would be east toward the city. And I know that, is that correct?
No, it's a slightly different area, but we will take any data on any problematic intersections in the second, because this is something that we're all aggressively trying to make improvements on, and not just in my council district, but in other districts, and trying to get more resources towards complete streets so we could have more stop signs, more, raised road tables and things like that. And to that point, there was a question, do you think that the new crosswalk signs are effective that say, state law, stop for pedestrians and crosswalks? How's the reception been to that so far?
I've had some comments from some neighborhood groups over off of Semmes Avenue, and they seem pretty receptive to it as they traveled around the city. I think personally, I think it gives you a chance to at least take your foot off the gas and put it over the brake because it's just something so new in the road. You slow down just in that sense. But I'm hoping, I'm sure they've been used other places and they work and they seem to be working well so far here in the city.
Thank you. Any other questions for the lieutenant related to traffic and safety? Okay, let's see here. Do you measure the frequency of accidents in the same location? If so, what metric is used to determine that an action is required to influence change?
We do track the top 10 intersections for crashes, and we do that on a quarterly basis. And then that information is reviewed, and then they make any kind of changes they do, whether it be timing of lights or things of that nature. Again, we work hand in hand with DPW on that, but our office does track on a quarterly basis the crashes that occur at the top 10 intersections in the city.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lieutenant? Either in the chat or if you want to raise your hand and ask for yourself. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you being here tonight, and keep up the great work. We appreciate this, and I will connect you with Jerome so that you can get that data to him. And I think Jackson Ward would probably like a similar report.
Sure.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good night.
Okay. And I think our next presentation, Sven, do you want to get us back onto the agenda?
Yeah, so it doesn't look like we have Director Frelke on with us at the moment, but we do have Director Kevin Vonk with the planning department. So Kevin, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, we can go ahead with your presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Sven. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can, thanks.
Great. I am going to see if I'm able to share my screen. And, all right, able to see my slides on the screen?
We are, thank you.
Great. Okay, so hi, my name is Kevin J. Vonk. I'm the acting director for the Department of Planning and Development Review. And what I would like to do this evening is just go through a few things. The first is just some discussion about proposal for rezoning of the Pulse Corridor. This is a paper that was considered at the end of 2020, ultimately withdrawn, and through some further conversations with impacted residents, we've been working to bring back a proposal to go back through the process, and wanted and thank Councilperson Jordan for inviting me here tonight to be able to discuss this before it goes back through the formal process. So this is an abbreviated version of a presentation that was presented to Plan Commission earlier this week. And I'd be happy to direct you, and I can send the link to the full set of slides, and also go through and answer any specific questions you may have. But I just wanted to kind of provide an overview of what is being proposed in this upcoming paper. So just as a reference point, the Pulse Corridor Plan completed in 2017, really looked at, how do we develop around this new bus rapid transit line? And the goals for development in this were to be compact and mixed, connected, thriving, and equitable. And so this was driving, the narrative within that Pulse Corridor Plan that said, here's how we should develop around the Pulse Corridor, the line itself, but especially the stations that serve it. And with that, it had a number of recommendations for development within. And then as we move forward in the planning process, one of the things was the completion of the city's master plan, Richmond 300, with which in it included an updated version of future land use. And this did change some future land use that was proposed in the Pulse plan, and really made it more aligned with future land use as it was proposed throughout the city. And for this corridor, and I'll take out the institutional, really the DMV campuses and the Science Museum, focused on 3 different areas. And one It's the neighborhood mixed use, the neighborhoods of Carver and Newtown West. And then as you start to move to the south and toward the Fan, then corridor mixed use, which is along West Broad Street, really kind of the core commercial vein of this area. And then destination mixed use, primarily the properties north of Broad Street, really between Ash and Bow, looking at this as, okay, a really signature development area for the city that would attract visitors, not just from Richmond itself, but from the region and beyond. And so what do we mean when we talk about these categories? Just a quick summary, the neighborhood mixed use, again, it's primarily residential with single family houses, ADUs, duplexes, small multifamily, and then secondary to that is things that service that residential, that service those residents. Small personal services, small commercial, institutional, cultural, government, generally at a height of 2 to 4 stories. The corridor mixed use, again, as I said, is primarily that commercial corridor with some office, professional services. Again, secondary to that, single family houses, institutional government, in terms of intensity and density, starts to grow a little bit between 2 and 10 stories. And then the destination mixed use, looking at, again, as I mentioned, those core places of the city that draw from not only the city itself, but the greater region and beyond. Much larger scale retail, office spaces, larger residential complexes. And it talks about being at least 5 stories in those areas. Again, as we've discussed, throughout this process, Richmond 300 being kind of guidepost over the next 20 years, how we want to see this land developed. And I think it's really important, as we discuss, that the land use is not zoning. And zoning is a tool that we used to be able to achieve that land use. And so part of the discussions have involved around, okay, what level of zoning is needed to help us at this time start to work towards that desired future land use as agreed upon by the community. And so we take a look at the zoning that's existing right now in this area. And as you can see, south of Broad Street, there's a long strip of urban business, and it's got a parking overlay on it. And I'm sorry, the label is a little off. It says UBP04 here. It's actually the parcels right along Broad Street. And then to the north of Broad, it's a mix of some business districts, some B4, B3, and a lot of manufacturing zoning, which really references kind of the industrial past of many of the parcels in this area, both for manufacturing purposes, but also warehousing and storage, transportation, logistics. And then as you move towards the east and in the neighborhoods of Newtown West and Carver, you'll see some more residential zoning, R6 and R7. And so when we start to layer on the future land use of again, the desired uses in this area, you start to see some of the conflict in terms of the zoning not being in line with what that desired future land use is. And primarily a lot of manufacturing uses or zones that are in here that I think there was a lot of discussion both in the Pulse plan and the Richmond 300 plan, that is not the desired future for this area. It's more mixed. And so this is what is going to be proposed in terms of future zoning for this area and will be discussed in the paper. When you look at south of Broad Street, primarily a rezoning to 2 different business districts, starting at Ash to Strawberry, a B5 district, and then B6 from Strawberry down to Ryland, and then a small portion of B4 between Ryland and Harrison, which aligns with some B4 as you move further to the east into the VCU campus. North of Broad Street, looking at the areas really between Hermitage and Lombardy, zoning to TOD1, which is our transit-oriented development district, looking to build those mixes of uses, around the stations. Looking at the neighborhood level, some small adjustments in the neighborhoods, moving some neighborhoods from R6 to R7 and then R7 to R8, which I'll explain a little bit in a future slide in terms of really trying to align the zoning with what is built there today And really it comes to, lot sizes and dimensions and reflecting the historical pattern of development in these areas. And then using R63 as kind of a buffer or transitional zone between some of the areas, the core areas of the neighborhood and the more dense development along Broad Street or further to the west. Right along the rail line in 6495, there's two pieces of manufacturing going to B7. That's a business use that does allow for some of the historic manufacturing uses to continue in a limited capacity so that they are still able to operate. So just a quick comparison, that looks at the differences between R6, R7, and R8. As you can see, when it comes to height and front yards, side yards, rear yards, there's not a whole lot of difference among these districts. Roughly, they're all 2 to 3 stories or 35 feet in height. But you will see the lot widths do decrease and the minimum lot areas decrease. And if you look at the sizes of the actual parcels in these neighborhoods, we feel that the zoning reflected here, moving from R6 to R7 and R7 to R8, more closely reflects, what those neighborhoods are in terms of how they are built out. And one of the things that we are looking at is, for those parcels that, there's only a handful, that may be vacant or ready for development, that it shouldn't have to be a long process to go through a variance through the BZA or special use permit in order to develop really single and 2-family homes in these areas. As you look at some of the multifamily residential districts, moving from R53 to R63, and then just in comparison with R73, R73 is not proposed as part of this rezoning. It's just a different comparison because there are some R73 areas around this area, but the only proposals here would be to move some spots from R53 to R63. Again, not a significant change in height, yards, but you do see, again, there's a reduction in lot width and minimum lot area of being able to more closely fit the pattern of development. And R63 also does allow for some limited commercial on corner lots, commercial that's really, designed to serve that neighborhood. And then mixed use comparisons, again, kind of the transect of commercial uses and mixed uses. Right now, the urban business does have some limitations in terms of development. I think we've had some discussions in the Pulse corridor plan and Richmond 300 talk about some increased development intensity along Broad Street, but also done in a way, especially on the south side of Broad, that respects the historic character of Grace Street and Fan to the south. And so with that, looking at, B5 and B6 primarily for that stretch. So B5, as I said, from Ash to Strawberry, a limit of 5 stories. And then B6 from Strawberry down to Ryland, a limit of 4 stories. And with that, some setbacks within there as well. And we can go into details if you desire, but generally they have the same types of uses that are in there really to be designed to serve more neighborhoods, more neighborhood serving than district serving. But I think this, again, respects what was put forth in the Pulse plan and Richmond 300 in terms of the right transition of development to allow for some redevelopment on Broad, but again, respect the residential use that's right there across the alley on Grace Street. So proposed schedule, we had a presentation, as I said earlier this week, at the City Plan Commission, just to put it out there for discussion. There's a paper that will be planned to be introduced next Monday. We're looking at scheduling some additional public engagement sessions. I think we're targeting probably the first or second week of June, with then to have some of those before it's formally discussed. If it's introduced on Monday, it would be discussed at the 21st at the City Planning Commission, and depending on their action, would go to City Council on June 28th for their consideration. So those are some tentative dates right now, but just wanted to provide an opportunity to kind of put out there what was being proposed and hopefully something different than was brought about last fall. And with that, I'd be happy if there's time to take any questions on it.
Thank you so much. We had a question from Jerome in Carver. how are non-conforming lots handled in this plan if they still exist? Thank you.
Sure. So with the zoning, things that are non-conforming in most cases and most residential uses, they're allowed to continue to exist. There are some limitations in terms of expansion on the property or alteration of the structures up until a point. The same thing goes with for uses. There is some small changes when you talk about the business districts. Generally, I mean, a good rule of thumb is something non-conforming really can only expand no more than up to like 50% of its area or value cumulatively before it then has to come into conformance. That's a very broad statement, but just because something changes the zoning overnight does not necessarily dictate or require an individual to stop or cease a use or change a use. They have that right vested. It's just if they are to invest or expand upon the business to a certain point, then some changes may come that would not allow for it or force it to come into compliance.
Got it. Thank you. And we do have a full agenda. A question from Historic Jackson Ward before we move on. Can you confirm that Jackson Ward is not addressed in this, as was discussed, I think, with your direct meeting with them?
Sure, that is correct. Jackson Ward is not a part of this. This is really the stretch between Arthur Ashe Boulevard and as far east as Belvedere. So it does not go into Jackson Ward at all.
Okay, great. And we were hoping that you could speak to two other topics. One, the Richmond 300 amendment process, where it is right now. And then two, yesterday in Land Use, Council Member Andreas Addison introduced a paper to eliminate all parking minimums. And that has generated a lot of outreach to our office and I'm sure to other council members' office also. If you could just let folks know sort of your take on that. I know there was not a formal staff presentation on it yet, but if you could speak to it. And I will just say, we could spend probably another 20 hours just talking about parking. So let's not go there. We still have our school board representative here. We still have Chris Frelke. We still have candidates. But if you could just give a snapshot for how that will move forward and how people can participate. And I promise everyone on here, we will have a lot of public discussion about parking. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So the two items, Richmond 300, that was also discussed at Land Use Housing Transportation Committee yesterday. Right now, council has introduced a resolution that would direct the Plan Commission to make amendments to Richmond 300. There is a list of amendments that are proposed that when a resolution is formalized, right now it is at the committee level. The committee elected to continue that until next month. And what that is there's a proposed amendments that say, look, here's Richmond 300, it's adopted. We would like to see potentially these things changed. Once council adopts and finalizes that particular resolution, it will have a final list of all the amendments requested. Then that will go to the City Plan Commission for consideration and their action. And there's a time clock that starts ticking in terms of having to make action on that, depending on the scope of amendments. There will be most likely, additional public engagement on those requests. And then Plan Commission makes a decision on what and to what scale it will amend the plan, adopts a new plan or adopts amendments, and then sends it back to council. So there will be a process involved. Plan Commission could do everything from choosing to adopt nothing to adopt everything, or somewhere in between. And the way our charter is written, there's a little bit of back and forth that Plan Commission is responsible for authoring the plan, but it is not in effect until council adopts it. So we need both. And so I think one of the things that we'll be doing in terms of our department is meeting with council members in between that time. I think Councilperson Jordan, we're meeting tomorrow to discuss your amendments and how we can look at either getting them incorporated into the plan or the other means and mechanisms to make sure that those concerns get implemented or addressed somehow through our policies. Second, so minimum parking requirements. Councilperson Addison introduced a resolution that would eliminate minimum parking requirements from our zoning code. So there's a section in our zoning code that basically says, look, if you're doing this type of use, you have to provide this many parking spaces. So per X hundred square feet or X number of employees, you have to provide one spot per that much square feet or employees. And there's a whole list of different uses, many which don't really even exist anymore, and a number like we have to interpret and go through. And what that does is saying, look, this is a city. Most people use automobiles as a form of transportation. We need some way to store those automobiles when they're using that use, or for residential perspective, when the car goes home to sleep at night. And so there's minimum requirements that you have to provide in terms of minimum number of spaces. What Councilperson Addison, his resolution would say, strike that section from the zoning ordinance. And what it does is it would not no longer dictate a minimum of parking requirements. You could still provide off-street parking, and you could provide it if you so chose, but it would be up to the individual property owner, business owner, developer to decide that set number of parking spaces. And so I think there's a lot of things in consideration that when you look at parking spaces, there's our requirements, but there's also requirements from lenders. There's also requirements from franchisees or national chains. There's also just common sense of, look, based on where I'm at and the clientele I want to attract, I'm going to provide those. What this does is it eliminates the minimum. And I think his starting point was kind of all the way over at the end, saying, look, let's start here. And frame the discussion about where we end up. And we may end up again at a space of talking about in what districts or what areas, would we potentially reduce, if not eliminate minimums for that parking. So that resolution, again, went to the committee, got referred back to council. Council will have to adopt that resolution, and basically then it would direct our staff to start working on that. In terms of timetable, that is something that we will take a look at soon, but I can say there will be some time on it. One, because it's going to require us some research to kind of get up to speed on it. But also we have to kind of work through our queue. And there's some other requests that precede it, some additional rezonings, talking about accessory dwelling units, some other things to finish up these rezonings that will come. But there will definitely be, as the council person said, plenty of public engagement on this, because this would be a substantial change for the city.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'll let one question in on this, and then we will do a whole separate meeting just on parking. But how does this interact with our parking overlays, our restricted parking? I think that is, most people on this call probably are in a restricted parking district.
Right. I absolutely think it has to, because when you look at parking, you look at, ultimately, where is a vehicle stored? And we have hundreds, thousands of miles of city streets with spaces for parking on it. And so I think as we look at, the areas of development and how densely they're developed and what type of development it is and what time of day that development is used, I really think we have to look at, starting to break down these barriers between on-street and off-street and how those assets are used throughout the day. So I know Ms. Lancaster was on yesterday to talk about that and expansion of programs, because I really think you do have to look at, how that impacts, residents, especially in residential neighborhoods that, for those that, again, were built pre-zoning without the requirements and do utilize the street, what that may mean in terms of additional future development in that area and how it may impact, supply and then demand. So that will definitely be part of the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. And if anyone has further questions for Mr. Vaughn, please send them to my office. We'll help connect you, and it'll help us form the agenda for this parking meeting and for the future meetings on these rezonings, because there's a lot that comes out after our master plan. And I know this is a specific topic of interest to most people who choose to get more involved in local government. So thank you. We love seeing your fan porch. And again, thank you for joining our meeting tonight.
Thank you.
We do have Mariah White on, who is our school board representative for the 2nd. if you could, Ms. White, give us a quick update from the schools. And then we will go to our Parks Director and then close saying hello to our candidates. Thank you.
First of all, Second District, I'd just like to say good evening, and I am going to be quick because I know it's a lot to go over tonight. I guess I'll go first, though. Everybody's interested in graduations. So the graduations for RPS will be June the 21st, June the 22nd, and June the 23rd. We're still working on the times. And also the governor's school's graduation for Maggie Walker will be June the 17th at 5 p.m. at Virginia Union football field, Hoover Field. And I'm going to move real quick. We are still trying to remind everyone that about fall reopening plans. If you want your student to go virtual, you must complete the virtual instruction form by June the 1st. So that's right around the corner. Go on our website. There is no action needed for students returning to in-person. There's also a summer program that will be offered. You can also go on that website to sign up for the summer program. There will also be a vaccination event for RPS students, will be held at George Wolfe High School on May the 22nd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. No appointment is necessary, but you need a guardian or a parent to attend. Again, we are excited to offer a variety of free summer programs for RPS. And that's for students in preschool through 12th grade. And you can register or email summerschool@rvaschools.net with any questions for that. And what have we covered? Last Monday at our meeting, we had a vote to change the actual bell schedule. And it was 5-4. I was not in favor of that, but the bell schedule for the fall, September the 8th, will be new bell changes. Also, we have still the same thing. The George Wolfe resolution was introduced, and we're still in the midst of that right now, where schools build schools. So that is the highlight of the school board that is going on right now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and that should conclude my agenda. Anyone has any questions? Anyone see any? Okay, well, that concludes my update for RPS.
Thank you so much, Mariah. And I had to step away to answer the door, but I think you are putting out a newsletter now. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. I was waiting. I know your administrator was giving me everyone's address, but he was still trying to update, I guess, the new presidents. I do have the newsletter from last month is on my Facebook page. So if you want to go to my Facebook page, which is my RPS Facebook page, and accept me, you can get my newsletter from there. And I'm still waiting for all the presidents. I know he had to get the new presidents of the Civics Association, and I will send everyone out so the presidents can send it to their community.
Okay, and what is the best way to send you emails or feedback? I've got a question in the chat. What's the best way to give feedback on the school construction process?
You can send me the email mwhite4rvaschools.net. Any emails that you would like to send, it just don't have to be on the school construction, but it can be anything of your desire, or anything that you want me to actually think about and collaborate in my decisions. I love that. Please feel free.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mariah. And We are going to, as an office, send out a paper newsletter coming up, and we'll make sure we have your contact information as well. And
Okay,
also share your sign up link for your email on our emails.
okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you for all you do. I know this has been a hard year for everyone, but especially for our students and for our school board.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe I saw our Parks Director in this field of squares, Chris Felke. I've been delighted to get to know him. He is one of our amazing city employees who really gives the love for our parks. I see a love emoji. So if you could give us an update on the parks, specifically Abner Clay Park. We always get some questions about Monroe Park. I know there's some folks on here that will love to hear the latest on that. And then we'll leave room for a little bit of Q&A, but with the bulk of Q&A probably being direct emails to you after this, just because we still have more folks to present. Thank you.
No, that'd be great. And I apologize. I just got the link a little bit ago, so I'm doing it from my phone. And so there might be a little bit of feedback, so I apologize on that front. But first, I just want to let you know, we are resuming some normal operations for the park system, which we're extremely excited about. As you are aware, the COVID restrictions are being slowly are going away. And as that happens, we are having more events and more things come back to normal to our park system. We will have summer camp in a limited capacity this summer that will be in person, that we have registration that actually opened up yesterday. It's Blackwell Community Center, Broad Rock, Hickory Hill, Hotchkiss, Powhatan, and Randolph Community Center and Westover Hills. We also will be at our housing authority sites and other select sites throughout the city in some of our playground areas, be doing the pop-up camp, which was actually something that formed during COVID. And what that is it's a completely outdoor where we provide breakfast and lunch and recreational activities for free in those communities. So we will be advertising those a little bit closer as we get to summer. And we also are looking at, you will see an announcement in the next few days about opening up some of our pools, not all of them, but 4 pools starting Memorial Day weekend, which is a first in over 20 years that we have opened up our pools this early. They'll just be on weekends. So they'll be there on Saturdays and Sundays, but we realized that people were ready to get back and doing some things. So we'll be doing those, and the announcement will be coming out in the next few days that is coming, but that's some really good news on that front. Also, I just wanted to thank Councilor Jordan for all of her support with the budget. We have seen our parks see dramatic increase. James River had its largest attendance ever, and we are already on track to surpass those numbers this year with the way that the data is coming back to us right now. So we had over 2 million visitors last year, and we expect to exceed that number this year. So for the questions directly related to the second district, Abner Clay, as you're aware, that we had a contractor that there was a lot of punch list items on that particular piece. So we've been working through those punch list items. They have to June 15th to finish all the items on there. That includes putting the new grass in place on the football field. That includes paving and putting up the basketball goals and getting all those different pieces done and meeting the standards. And then we will go through one more time to make sure all the things that were on that punch list, which was over 150 items, are addressed. But we do have a really good Timmons Group has been working with us to document any of those concerns and get those. I know this project has been in the work for over a decade, and that I know the community is very excited about it, but it has transformed the space. We're almost to the finish line on that particular one, and so we're working through that. Monroe Park, there's been some concerns about the bollard system that is in there. There's been some failure in that, so we are looking at potentially in certain key areas, potentially putting some planters in space that will be large planters that vehicles cannot go into. We have that in different areas. It's been successful in some places at 17th Street Market. And so we're looking to clone that or duplicate that on some areas of Monroe Park to see how that will work. We also, as everyone is well aware, have had some challenges with the stone dust. So we are looking at some repair options to the pathways that have had the most issue. Technically, all these issues would be the responsibility of the Conservancy, but at the end of the day, this park is a city asset. And so our desire is to protect our asset. So we've been working in partnership with the Conservancy on the bollards and coming up with a solution for the stone dust, and so, or at least a repair option. So we're working through some of those details, and hopefully we'll have a solution in the coming weeks on that front. Also, number one thing is the status of the fountain that is on the Conservancy for the maintenance of that, and they are looking to fundraise and have had some success with getting some donors from what I'm aware of, so that they can slowly start to get that back up and operating.
Terrific. We also had a question about Little John Park in Sherwood Park. Can we get the trash cans emptied, and is there any plans for future investment for that park?
At this
That's in the
time,
north side for those of you who are.
yeah, I know where it is. We did a I-95 project over there when I first started in that vicinity. I will work with my staff on the trash, and as always, you can send something to Ask Parks Rec. That is our email at richmondgov.com, and they'll make sure that gets addressed pretty quickly. But feel free, I will follow up when I get off this call. I'll send an email to my staff person for Little John. At this point, there are not any dollars assigned to Little John to do any renovations to that particular parcel. If there are some things that the community would like to see, we're open to those conversations, and we're always looking for partners that may be willing to do some things there for us. And we also have the ability to create a friends group, and the friends group can create a 501c3 and potentially get donations. So those are all things that we'd be happy to assist on.
Okay, great. Circling back to Admiral Clay for a moment. So if June 15th is when Parks and Rec takes control, is there a date estimated for when it's open to the public and up and running, and then any sort of celebration that we should be on the lookout for?
So I think the question number one is that if we can get everything done and make sure the contractual agreement is met on June 15th, then we can plan the rest of it. So our tentative date that we would open everything back up and it would come back to our control June 15th. Then we would work in partnership with your office and the mayor's office, and anyone else, I know the historic Jackson Ward neighborhood would like to be part of that also. But we can definitely have some discussions to celebrate this, because this has been over a decade in the making to see this happen. So we know there's a lot of people that want to celebrate this coming day.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And Sven has put the email to get into contact with the Parks Department in the chat. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is welcoming the people who are running for our citywide offices. So this June is the Democratic primary. Now, for a lot of offices in Richmond, essentially this is where the real race is for these offices, because there might not be a Republican contender. So if you are invested in who are in either of these positions, now is the time to get to know these candidates, research them, and make sure that you go vote. You can vote early. You cannot vote often, you can only vote once, but you can go down to the registrar's office in advance, which is on Laburnum. And Sven will drop into the chat the link for how you can look up where your voting district is, because there have been some changes because of COVID. I don't know what the latest is, to be honest. So make sure you know your voting plan. And this is just going to be a quick hello for our candidates for Commonwealth Attorney and for Sheriff to introduce who they are, provide their contact information, their website, any future meet and greets so that you can get to know them better, and follow up with questions offline, because we could, again, this could be like a whole program of its own, but I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to meet. So we will start with our current Commonwealth Attorney, Colette McEachin, who was at one of our previous meetings. And Colette, if you are unavailable, I will let you introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman Jordan. Hi to the 2nd District. I've seen lots of you before at various meetings, so thank you for welcoming me back, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about the great things that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office has done and will be doing in my next term. I've already put into the chat, so that I didn't forget, my contact information, both my work phone and information about the campaign. So please access that if you're interested. The first thing I want to say is that I love my job. I love being a Commonwealth's attorney. And the reason I love it is because I get to help people. It is a job that allows you to be a voice for victims and at the same time to work on the root causes of some people's behavior, whether that root cause is a mental health issue, whether that root cause is a substance abuse issue, whether that root cause is an intimate partner violence issue, whether that root cause is a family dysfunction issue, and try to lead that person to the resources that can help them address that issue and prevent recidivism. I have been with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for over 20 years, and I have lived and worked and raised children and educated children in the Richmond schools. And so I know each and every part of the city of Richmond. I was a community prosecutor in both the 4th precinct and the 1st precinct. And I know that many of you on this call have seen me at your various community meetings. I think it's really important for people to feel that they have access to their Commonwealth Attorney's Office, that you don't only see me when you're in court or when you come to the courthouse, that I am out in Gilpin Court and Jackson Ward and Oregon Hill and Woodmont and every part of the city, because we all have to work together to make a more productive and equitable city for everyone to feel comfortable living in. One of the main goals of a Commonwealth's attorney is to promote public safety. And that means that all members of the public need to feel safe. And so how do you do that? The 3 principles that guide my office are reform, restore, and rehabilitate. So some of you on this, this Zoom may remember the old reading, writing, and arithmetic, that those were the 3 R's that we learned when we were in school. But the 3 R's that guide my office are reform, restore, and rehabilitate. So that means that when someone comes before us, when an individual comes before us who has been charged with a crime, the first thing that we have to do is make sure that they are appropriately charged, that they are not overcharged. And then we have to look at their individual situation and address what is at the heart of that situation. We also, of course, have to focus on the victims and witnesses who have been brought into the criminal justice system because of this offense. And so one of my goals in the coming year is to bring restorative justice principles, yet another R, restorative justice principles to all 3 of the courthouses, both juvenile and domestic relations, the general district courthouse, and circuit court, as a means of having the victim, if he or she is willing, and the defendant, if he or she is willing, talk and figure out a way to restore the community healing and repair the damage that the defendant has done without getting involved in the criminal justice system. That is a win-win for everyone. I'm also very focused on bringing something that I'm calling, but have not trademarked, Law School 101 to the Richmond Public School System. And I know Ms. White has heard me mention this in other meetings. And right now I am working with a number of social agencies and nonprofits to figure out the best way, once the Richmond Public Schools are back on their feet and the kids and the teachers are in a place where they are willing to let us come in, to provide Law School 101 to certainly high schoolers and perhaps middle schoolers, so that they're aware of their rights and responsibilities once they become a driver behind the wheel. We're all aware that a lot of dangerous and violent actions occur at traffic stops, especially involving Black and brown young men and women. And so our community, where Richmond Public Schools is predominantly Black and brown students, that community, our Richmond, needs to know what their rights and responsibilities are to minimize that occurrence. And as those kids become older and leave the juvenile world and become adults at 18, we have high school students who are legal adults. And they need to be aware of what their rights and responsibilities are as legal adults. So between restorative justice, Law School 101, and the reform, restore, and rehabilitate principles that guide our office, I hope that you will consider voting for me in the June 8th primary, and I look forward to any questions that anyone might ask. Thank you so much, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you so much, Ms. McEachin. And also running for this position is Tom Barber. He is with us tonight to say hello. And you did a great job, Ms. McEachin, keeping it at 5 minutes. So that'll be the standard for the rest of our folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much to the Second District and to Councilor Jordan for hosting everybody here tonight. My name is Tom Barber, and I'm running as the Progressive Challenger in the Democratic primary for Richmond's Commonwealth Attorney's Office, because I think we're missing this moment. In Richmond, I think we are missing this historic moment for criminal justice reform that's happening across our country and across our Commonwealth, because we've got a Commonwealth Attorney's Office that simply has not modernized its practice or its approach to public safety. It's stuck in the past. It's an office that has not joined the Virginia Progressive Prosecutors for Justice to lobby for smart criminal justice reform in Virginia. I will do that. It's an office where prosecutors are not subject to performance reviews or strict guidance about who to incarcerate or why, but I will implement systems to address both of those issues, because right now we've got 750 people per day on average incarcerated at the Richmond City Jail, and about 90% of them are Black and brown. It's an office that doesn't address root causes because it's organized to do its work around cases, not people. And so the focus of the office culture is to resolve cases in the courtroom rather than leaning forward and addressing problems in the community. But that's something that I will do. I will make sure that we proactively tackle recidivism by reorganizing the workflow of the office to vertically prosecute around people, not just their cases. I will also make sure that when we do this, we're focusing on people who pose significant risks of public safety, especially of gun violence. Right now, that doesn't happen because of how the office organizes its work, and that's dangerous. We've seen in Richmond over 500 people shot in the last 2 years. I'm also committed to establishing a diversity recruitment program so that our prosecutors look like the city in which we prosecute. Right now, that's not the case. Fewer than 5 out of 40 of our prosecutors are racially diverse, and many actually drive in from the surrounding counties to advocate in Richmond's courtrooms. I will also make sure, and I say this not just as a former prosecutor, a current defense attorney, but as a former Marine Corps officer who has trained and operated with foreign police forces in both Iraq and Afghanistan, that I will hold police accountable for their actions. Right now, we've got an office that has demonstrated it's not able or willing to do that, because in allegations against 18 officers stemming from actions last summer, indictments have only been secured against 2. And that means that's a failure rate of about 88%. So if people want to learn more about me and my platform, they can go to my campaign website, which I'm putting in the chat right now. There you'll learn that I'm a former prosecutor and policy advisor to then Commonwealth Attorney Mike Herring, that I worked alongside Aman Shabazz on root cause approaches to crime, and that when Mr. Herring left to go to McGuire Woods, I left to continue that work by starting a nonprofit in the city called the Virginia Holistic Justice Initiative. I'll drop the link to that in the chat here. And that initiative does the social work to connect people in the system to the services that they need to move out of it. As part of that work, I launched earlier this year a web-based application called the RVA Justice Hub that organizes city services around need so that we can have criminal justice practitioners advocating for alternatives to incarceration from the palm of their hand. And I'm also an active defense attorney in Richmond. I've started my own practice. My wife, Julia, is a senior public defender. We are in court every day arguing to keep our clients out of incarceration and put them into the services that they need. And I've put an example of that in the chat as well. Finally, you'll find that I bring a significant leadership, management, and policing perspective to bear because I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia, the University of Virginia School of Law, and the Darden School of Business. And I'm a former captain in the Marine Corps and a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, where I've actually trained and operated with police forces and held them to account to high standards in their community. So when I look at our criminal justice system, I'm able to look at it from a variety of perspectives through a diverse set of experiences. And I know that we can meet this moment. I know that we can modernize our system with a fundamentally different social services approach to public safety that keeps us safe, but also respects the humanity of everyone touched by crime and the criminal justice system. If people want to continue this conversation and want to learn more with me directly, I'm actually on Zoom every night at 6 p.m. in a room accessible through my website. You can go ahead and log on and we can talk about anything you'd like regarding criminal justice reform or public safety issues in the city. And you can also contact me on my cell phone, which I'll put in the chat right now. And I thank you again, Councilor Jordan, and everyone on the call for being here tonight to hear this vision for a safer city.
Thank you so much. We will now turn to our sheriff candidates. We have our incumbent, Sheriff Irving. Are you able to unmute yourself? We are doing 5-minute intros. Just give folks a snapshot of why you serve, why you're running again, and then you can put in the chat your contact information for people to follow up with other questions or where they may find out more information. And we thank everyone who is running, because this is an extraordinary time to run, and these offices are incredibly important to our city. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Sheriff Irving. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm rerunning so we can continue the great work that we're doing over at the Sheriff's Office to ensure that our individuals that are residing there are able to go home and get a career, get their education, make sure that their families are well, and that they are prepared medically, and make sure they have the resources that they need. You know, our goal is to make sure they're home ready, work ready, and community ready to ensure that, you know, they're able to be a major part in what goes on in the city. They're able to sit down at the table with the leaders and make sure that we can make decisions that's going to benefit all of our citizens. As you know, I've been your sheriff now for 3.5 years. The primary election is on June 8th, and I would like your support. I've been doing this work for over 30 years now. Started at Henrico, worked my way through, and now I'm the sheriff here in the city. We are working hard to make sure that we provide the appropriate medical services. Our new medical company has done a really good job of ensuring that the medical conditions are addressed, and any situations that come up are taken care of, the mental health issues. Plus, we have resources that are available as well to ensure that if you are going out of the facility, that you can get those resources attached to you, and make sure that we can follow through with you on those resources. We've obtained over $3.5 million worth of grants to ensure that we can provide those services, as well as to provide training opportunities for the individuals that are there, as well as training opportunities for the individuals that work here. We provided them with uniforms and equipment to ensure that they can do the job that you as the citizens of the city expect. We expect professionalism and accountability. So we're making sure that we're doing those things with our staff, making sure we get the appropriate training, and that we can perform and execute our job the way it is expected of us from you. We work with our individuals to ensure that during this pandemic, that we kept our numbers down. We didn't have any major illnesses or deaths in the facility. During the COVID, we had some of the best protocols in the state. We've had other individuals refer to us and come to us to get our protocols, as well as the Department of Corrections and other state officials. We were we received high accolades from the Department of Health, Virginia Department of Health, in reference to our protocols. And we have a weekly meeting with the Department of Health to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that we're on top of the COVID pandemic. We're giving vaccines now on site. We have, at this point, almost half of our population, and some of them have been returned back to the community, have been vaccinated with either the first or the second vaccine. Our staff members are getting vaccinated on a regular basis. So we're making sure that we get those things done. We're hoping that we can start our visitation back up in July. Now that the restrictions are being lifted, and hopefully we can get that done, but we're waiting on the Department of Corrections and CDC to give us some more information on that because we're a congregate facility. Also, we are working on additional programming to work with individuals that we have to ensure they're continuing to work on behavioral things as well as some of the clinical things that are going on with them. Because we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing to get them well taken care of. So we're working hard trying to get grants to ensure that we don't have to substitute monies from the city. We're making sure that we have the staff needed to ensure the safety and life, health, and safety of the residents and the staff. We have recently passed our 3-year audit from the Department of Corrections for life, health, and safety, as well as all the other conditions. We've done our training audit and we've passed that. We've done our fire inspection with the fire marshal. We've done that. So we're working really hard to ensure that we can represent you as the city of Richmond in the most professional and efficient way that we possibly can. Again, if you would like to be in touch with me, you can reach me at info@urbanforsheriff.com, or you can just give me a call and I will put all that information in the chat.
Thank you so much. Mr. Burnett, 5 minutes. Thank you. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. Are you able to unmute yourself? There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for having me here, Council. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a 28-year law enforcement professional, 12 years with the Richmond Sheriff's Office. I was a lieutenant colonel, which was the next position to the sheriff. I did 16 years with the Richmond Police Department. I was a sergeant. I also am a U.S. Army veteran and I hold a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. When I was brought in 2006, back in the day to take over operations, the jail at that time was had people sleeping on the floors. Everybody was running up and down hallways. It was an out of control situation. I was brought in to fix that problem. Using my law enforcement background, I brought structure, organization, and order to the facility. Making a few changes after traveling all over the country to find out the best ways and measurements that we could use to change our facility around. We've created a few things that brought safety and a very more healthy environment. In 2006, I was tasked with the job of reducing a $5 million deficit that we inherited from the previous administration. By the year end, that deficit was turned into a surplus. And every year, the entire 12 years that we were in office, we either gave money back to the city or we either came right straight in on budget. The current situation, as you all know, the current sheriff has been over budget ever since she's been in office. In 2019, the city did an audit on her. She was 333% over budget, costing taxpayers $2.8 million. This year, this first quarter alone, she's already asked for $1.1 million. So when it comes to budgeting, I think I can handle that situation down there pretty much well. The life, health, and safety standards, when we were in office, 12 out of 11 times, we received a 100% out rating. I was very instrumental in the funding and building, the help with funding, identifying the funding for the new Justice Center, which was a $134 million project. We reduced our assaults in the jail back then by 79.2%, almost having all assaults was almost non-existent. For the first time in the history of the Sheriff Department, we created, we met the standards and got the first time the state law enforcement accreditation. Our last year in office, our budget was $38.9 million. And I think at the end of the year, we had 35.4 million expenditures and we gave the taxpayers back $3.5 million. Some of the things that I want to do is use the Sheriff Department as a resource instead of a warehouse for individuals. And when I talk about resources, I'm going to get put in programs like we used to have that you can see, touch, and feel, not programs that I'm going to throw numbers out and tell you about how many millions of dollars I received. I'm gonna tell you things like when we partnered with VCU, VUU, VSU to offer college level courses to build better people, better citizens than better criminals to go back out to the public. I'm gonna tell you about the year that we graduated in our GED program, more GEDs than the entire Richmond public school system. When we created a father-daughter dance program that kept that connection and that bond between the father and their daughter to change their mindset, to get them back out there, to get them back on track. I'm gonna partner with our seniors, our vets. We're gonna build better citizens instead of building better people to come out in our community and do additional things that shouldn't be done. Some of the things that I'm gonna look at also for the first time in the history of the sheriff's office is I'm gonna look at law enforcement reform. That's something that we're lacking in our community today. We've lost that trust between law enforcement and our citizens. We got to build that back. So for the first time ever, I'm gonna look around the city and create a citizen review board to help us keep us honest in our department, making sure that everything that we see as leaders in the sheriff department, the citizens themselves see also. I think that all law enforcement organizations should have body cams. That's something that the sheriff department doesn't have. It helps us keep us honest and on track. So I'm gonna push for that. And I'm not gonna ask the citizens to pay for it. We're gonna look at grants that we can bring in to push these types of things, new ways of going about doing things. I'm also, for the first time, gonna look at the Office of Inmate Advocacy, somebody that will advocate on the rights of inmates, making sure, again, that we're doing the right things as leaders in the law enforcement, especially at a time when we have lost that trust in our community. I'm also big on law enforcement itself. For the first time in the history, I'm gonna create a play a role in reducing crime in the city of Richmond. We found that 70 to 75% of the people that commit the most violent acts in our city already have warrants on file for their arrest. So we're gonna play a role in doing that. We're gonna go out and try to get the people that need to be arrested, and the ones that don't need to be arrested for minor offenses and these things that tie our tax dollars up. We don't have them in the jail. So I'm gonna focus on being a person to reduce that recidivism rate. Our youth, I'm gonna partner with Richmond Public Schools because I wanna give judges alternatives to sentencing kids and to our system. Instead of putting them in the system, we need to focus more on their education and getting them to do the right thing. So I want to put in PAL programs like the Richmond Police Department does. I'm gonna play a major role in being a partner in the community and not again a resource, a place of just housing, warehousing, and putting people out on the street worse than what they came into jail. That's one of the things that we're having across the country, and that's something that we have to change as we move forward. If we want to progress, especially in the city of Richmond with the gun violence that's going on, we got to make better citizens. And the only way that we can change that is to start at a very, very early age. And after you get them on track and keep changing that process, bringing others in to partner with us, Richmond Public Schools, business owners, faith, community leaders, all sorts of things. We got to reach in our toolbox and pull everything we can to make us a better city than what we have now. So I'm asking you to vote for me. Give me an opportunity in that Democratic primary coming up on June the 8th. I put my information in the chat. If there's something that anyone wants to ask, you can send me a message to my webpage or my phone number, which has been placed on there. But I thank you for having me, and I do again ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for coming. I know you guys have been working so hard. I can hear it in your voices. So another reason to keep it short tonight, because y'all have been on a real circuit, I know. For those of you who want to see a more robust discussion, Sven has put a link in the chat to the Richmond City Democratic Committee's candidate debate. So you'll see the back and forth. It'll be longer and there'll be more content there. And of course, you can go to their websites, go to their Facebook pages, figure out where they're going to be next. And Candidates love to hear directly from voters, so don't be afraid to reach out with an email. Again, thank you guys so much for taking some time with us. We are going to spend the last few minutes on updates from our office. If you would like to say farewell, we appreciate you joining us. I'm sure you have more work ahead, but good luck and thank you for running. It takes great people stepping forward to run so that we have great choices. I'm just going to close out with just a few council updates. And a lot of this gets covered in my emails and through my social media pages. So I'm going to move kind of quickly. Feel free to, reach back out, ask questions offline. Always happy to get your emails. We covered the casino process at the beginning. We expect probably announcement this week. I'm cautiously optimistic that our very loud and consistent opposition to bow tie has had the desired effect. Quick budget recap. We fully funded the RPS budget request. We got 3% raises for city employees. And that's really critical. I don't know if anyone watched the budget cycle, but something like 75% of all city employees have been with us for less than 5 years. And that is not good for anybody. So we need to pay folks more. We need to do a better job recruiting because it leads to better customer service. We also got funding for the Civilian Review Board. That is an important step towards also creating pay parity for our public defenders. And we will be allocating $500,000 towards gun violence intervention. Things that I specifically worked on, I fought for that funding for gun violence intervention. I also helped unfreeze 4 staffing positions in planning and development review. I had an amendment to unfreeze all 12 and a half. Wasn't able to get that full $1 million, but we did get enough to unfreeze 4 people, which is going to be critical, not only as we work through the Richmond 300 master plan, but when we're trying to do the overlay for Jackson Ward or Carver. There's so much work. It's more than our current staff can keep up with. And I think everyone has heard their stories of their friends who cannot get permits for their projects, whether they're a business owner or whether a homeowner. So I'm hopeful for that. I also helped secure money for Parks and Rec and fought for more money for Complete Streets, which would address things like more stop signs, speed tables, and things that make our streets safer, as well as sidewalks. So now that that's kind of behind us, we also are shifting towards our planning for the American Rescue Plan funds, and also some legislative actions that our office is working on. I fought hard during the budget to try and make sure money going towards new vehicle purchases would fund green fleet implementation. I wasn't able to get that in the budget, but I'm now working on getting, the city already has a plan that they finished in 2019. So it just needs to be updated for a green fleet. And we're trying to get that adopted by July 1 when the new budget goes into effect, because there is going to be a lot of infrastructure dollars coming down to Virginia. And if we have our plan in place, we can use those dollars to help modernize our fleet for our police officers, Parks and Rec, fire, the vehicles that are used in our city fleet. So I would like to see us be able to take advantage of that moment. And also, it helps us towards our net zero 2050 goal, being a more environmentally friendly city. Also working on trying to make the Office of Sustainability independent. I mentioned the Jackson Ward Overlay and Historic District, which we're working on. And working with, obviously, the continuing work of figuring out parking, which will be another meeting, I promise. I'm now going to turn it over to, oh my gosh, there's so many more things we can talk about, but I'm going to turn it over to Sven. If you're there, I know you're juggling things on your side as well, but if you could just quickly mention where we are on the ARP funding. And then in case people are starting to trickle out, I do just want to make sure everyone knows there will be a virtual event May 25th at 3 p.m. to honor Adele Johnson, who passed away tragically honor her amazing contributions to Richmond and to the Black History Museum. So I have shared that on my Facebook page. If you're available to join the virtual event May 25th at 3 p.m., we would love to see you there. In lieu of any contributions or outreach to the family, they're asking you to contribute to the Black History Museum, and our office will be making a contribution on behalf of the 2nd District. We would love for you to join us on that. It's also Mental Health Awareness Month. The info line for the National Alliance on Mental Illness is 804-285-1749. Mental illness is an illness. Too often it's treated as a stigma, but speak up, reach out, check on your friends. This has been a tremendously difficult year for everyone, and we all need help from time to time. So they are there to help. They have a lot of great resources on their website. They also have several events where you can participate and get information on resources. That'll be on their website, which we will share. So with that, I'm going to take a breath, turn it over to Sven, and let him give you guys the quick update on the ARP funds.
Well, good evening, everyone. And just, you know, in case my dog starts squeaking toys in the background, I apologize preemptively. But on the American Rescue Plan funds that are coming down to the city, we're expecting both further guidance and a more concrete amount of money in the next couple of weeks here. But because of a quirk in Virginia, whereby cities operate both as counties and as cities in terms of their federal designation, we are duly eligible for federal relief dollars in the amount somewhere between $100 and $200 million. And what council is working on right now collaboratively is developing a list of priorities that are in line with what have been developed at a city council retreat that was publicly held back in March, as well as some priorities that were developed throughout the budget process that include the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that include long-term addressing our homelessness crisis, and a number of other items. And so I think the emphasis here is that we will have some leeway as to how we utilize these funds as a locality. The federal relief was construed intentionally to be fairly broad as to how localities can utilize those monies. And so we want to continue to hear from you as residents what your feedback is on what your priorities are and how we can best reflect that in how we utilize that revenue. So that's the quick and dirty on that.
Great, thank you so much. And as always, we try and connect our constituents to city resources. We're here to try and connect you, but we also want to empower you to reach out directly. So there are some information that we put up. Safe and Healthy Streets Commission. That is a terrific group that we had a presentation from in the Land Use Committee, gosh, yesterday or day before yesterday. This week has been a blur. But they are looking at streets citywide that could have their speed lowered. So it's like from 25 to 15. And they will be making a recommendation to the Land Use Committee at the next meeting. So if that's something that interests you, that's a great commission to get involved with. And you know, certainly it's something that touches everyone in the city. We also have links for the Green 2050 plan. We did not talk about the monument disposition process really much during this meeting, but the link for that is up here along with the voting information. So you can find your polling place. And then personal property tax guidance. We've gotten a lot of outreach about people getting property tax bills that seem high. The best advice that we've gotten so far is to call 311 and they will connect you with someone to answer your bill questions. And then if you feel like you're not satisfied with that, reach back out to our office. And Sven is going to be dropping some more information in the chat. I'm going to take a breath. Does anyone have any questions on things that we haven't covered yet or things that we did cover? Feel free to raise your hand or put it into the chat. You guys are the diehards. You stayed for 2 hours, so thank you. Okay, well, either everyone is out and they just left on their squares, or you feel like you have gotten as much second district city information as you can possibly handle. So thank you for being here tonight. And we will continue to send things out via our newsletters. We will share the recordings, and stay safe out there. COVID is still real. Just because some people are getting vaccinated does not mean it's over. Please stay vigilant. Thank you everyone so much. Good night.
And just to echo what Councilor Jordan said, we'll be sharing this on our social media as well as our YouTube page. So if folks want to share it with anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight,
Yeah.
something that you want to go back and see, that will be there. Thank you all.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you.